Hello everybody, welcome to the video. My name is Midway and today we're gonna be going over the Season 4 Mythic Plus guide for Holy Paladin. Even though not much has changed from Season 3, we'll still cover everything you need to know for how to build your Holy Paladin to play Mythic Plus properly in Season 4, so let's get into it. But before we do that though, please drop a like in the video and subscribe to the channel. Only about 15% of you that watch my videos are subscribed, and I would really love it if you could go ahead and do so. It goes a massive way in me being able to build the channel up. Now, if you also want to watch all my videos whenever they come live, remember to click the notification bell so you get notification whenever they actually are uploaded. And now we can move on to the guide. Now I do want to mention that if you are a beginner Holy Paladin, you're just getting started with the spec, or you want to hear a lot more gameplay oriented tips built around the basics of how to play a Holy Paladin instead of much more Mythic Plus focused tips, then you should go ahead and check out this guide. It's probably gonna be up there or maybe up there, I don't really know, but I'll be linking it up there, and you should check that guide probably before doing this one. Then you should come back to this one. This is gonna be much more build focused, the other one will be much more gameplay focused, as I mentioned. So yeah, go ahead and check that out if you're interested in that kind of stuff. So let's get the elephant out of the room first. Which covenants should you be picking if you want to do Mythic Plus as a Holy Paladin in Season 4? Well, the answer is really the same as in Season 3. If you want to be pushing high keys, you'll find that you'll likely want to go Necrolord. The reason for that is you're just going to be doing more damage, more healing, and in general, you'll feel safer. Now, if you are not that skilled as a Holy Paladin, or you just want to take things a little bit safer, then Kyrian is the choice for you. Divine Toll, it's still doing what it does best, as always. It's a very good panic button. Now, it will probably do a little bit less damage than Necrolord. That is especially if you're using your Divine Tolls defensively for healing. If you're not able to use them offensively for doing damage, then well, you'll just not do as much damage as a Necrolord, just naturally. But you can always have that double option to do a little bit of damage here, a little bit of healing here. You know, it's a little bit more versatile, but yeah, I'll still recommend you to go Necrolord if you're going to do high keys. If you find yourself that you're lacking some healing, you're just not cutting it, you're kind of struggling a little bit, don't be ashamed of going Kyrian. Kyrian is actually really good, really strong, and in scenarios where you don't even have that many melees, Kyrian will eventually just straight up be better. But yeah, those are the two options right there. Same deal as in Season 3. Benthir is kind of dead since Ashen's been nerfed, and Night Faith doesn't exist until Dragonflight, but yeah, those are the options. Let's start with the Soulbinds for Necrolord. Your options here are many that you will be picking 9 out of 10 times. It's gonna give you more AoE damage, and it's also gonna give you quite a defensive option. And then if you want to go for more single target damage, and you also want to have the CC immunity from Fleshcraft, then you're going to be picking Marilith. Now, you will be picking Marilith in many cases whenever you really need this CC immunity. Specifically, for example, lower Karazhan, Maiden of Virtue, you can use this CC immunity from Fleshcraft to not have to step into the pools and take the ticking damage. So those are really strong options, very versatile. You can switch them in different scenarios, and they are both very strong. Now, let's say you want to be playing Kyrian, then your options will be Mechanicus for more overall damage, and then Cleia for a little bit of a more defensive approach, but as well as providing quite some damage. You have those two options right there. Pelagos, it's a no-no, so a little bit of a versatile option once again, but for the most part, you will be picking Mechanicus. Moving on to Conduits, you have the same options as in Season 3, nothing has changed, as well as for the Covenants basically. You want to be going for your Covenant, or your Conduit for the Covenant ability that you have, either that is Vanquisher's Hammer, or even if it's Divine Toll. Then you want to be picking Shielding Wards. That's a must for using Mythic Plus, it gives you a lot of free healing. You want to be using Condensed Anima Sphere whenever possible, also a lot of free healing. It's now outscaling Golden Path by a mile. And then you could choose to go with Lights Barding for more movement speed on the horse, basically longer duration on the horse, not more movement speed. And the other option would be to go Echoing Blessings. You can sometimes slot both, you can sometimes not, depending on what Soulbind you're using. You could also then slot the Turn Evil, Ranged Evil Conduit if you need to use Turn Evil. That's not really something that I can say now if it's gonna be that useful or not, but that would always be something pretty useful if you really want to make use of Turn Evil quickly. And then there will be also the option of using Focused Light, even though it's quite a not that impactful conduit. You know, you gotta put something in those potency conduits, so might as well go ahead and put Focused Light. If you happen to be playing Marolith and you have an extra slot for that potency conduit, then you can go ahead and use Virtue's Command for a little bit more damage, or you can also use Enkindled Spirit if you want to take it a little bit safer and have some fat lights on after you use your Aura Mastery. So let's talk about the talents. So literally nothing has changed here. You're picking the same talents as in Season 3. So if you want to hear a much more in-detail explanation of why you pick one versus the other, you should then go ahead and check out my previous Mythic Plus guide for Season 3. I did a little bit more of an extended version of this there. Here, I'll just let you know the breakdown of what you want to be picking, and that will be Light's Hammer, Judgment of Light, Blinding Light, Unbreakable Spirit, Divine Purpose, Awakening, and Beacon of Faith. That is the staple for Mythic Plus. Usually this is always what you always pick when you are playing as Necrolord. Now, if you are Kyrian, then you could probably play Seraphine and line it up with Divine Toll, either if it's for damage or for healing. That is always a way of making your Divine Tolls much fatter. It might be a little bit clunky in higher keys, but usually it's accepted that Seraphine here really enhances the gameplay of a Kyrian, since Divine Toll, it's such a huge reason of why you're playing Kyrian, therefore why not making even better. So let's move on to one of the key differences between Season 3 and Season 4, and that is where do we want to be crafting our legendaries. Now, before in Season 3, our legendaries were a higher item level piece, and therefore we got more stats out of them, so we wanted to put them in high prio item slots like the legs, the chest, the helmet, whatever we could afford, so that we would get more stats out of that item. But now that's completely the opposite. Our legendaries are lower item level, and therefore what we want to be doing is freeing up item slots that have higher prio, so that we can equip higher item level items there and therefore move our unity onto lower prio item slots. This would be, for example, the wrists. So what the Paladin Discord is recommending is to craft unity on the wrists so that we can do whatever I just said. Now, where do we want to be crafting our other legendaries? Where Vanguard's Momentum is still going to be crafted onto the boots, Shock Barrier could still be crafted onto the boots, Mad Paragon could still be crafted onto the boots or onto the belt, Shadowbreaker should be go on the belt, and that's really the options. If you want to go for Marats, you could do that on the chest, but because you don't want to be using the ring slots, but we'll talk about that later. But those are the slots you want to be equipping the items on. Now, which legendaries would you be using? I would personally be using Vanguard's Momentum for the most part, maybe a little bit of Mad Paragon during Tyrannical, but I wouldn't be using any of the other healing legendaries. If you want to be taking it safer and have an easier approach to healing things, then you can go for Shock Barrier, for Shadow Breakers, or even for Marats if you're feeling spicy. I don't recommend picking Marats, but you could do so if you so desire. I would recommend, if you want to take it safer, go ahead and pick Shadow Breakers, or if you just don't even want to think about positioning yourself for Light of Dawn, just straight up pick Shock Barrier and don't even think about that. Now, one of the big reasons why Season 4 is so exciting, it's one part because of Valor being uncapped, another part because there is new dungeons, and the last part is because there is new chase item. Those being new items that are really strong, we want to be getting. They are the new best slot, but they are new, so we kind of have a new purpose. We kind of want to see how they play, and we want to kind of see just get them and have them for the first time. So we're going to be talking about which those are and where you can get them from. So in the first place, there is the Drape of Shame. This is a cloak that drops from lower Kara-san. It used to drop from Maiden of Virtue, so now in Mythic Plus it just drops from the entire run of lower Kara. This increases your critical healing done by 3%, which is huge. It also has quite good stats with crit burst, really good for Mythic Plus, but you want to be getting this for any form of PvE content. The 3% increased critical strike heal is just massive. It's best slot for pretty much every healer, so you want to be getting this 100%. Just farm a lot of lower Karas until you can get it, and ideally upgrade it to the max. It's gonna be really good for you, so you wanna be getting this 100%. Next up, there is the Mechagon rings. Those used to be OP in BFA, and that's just the case for Shadowlands. There is the activators from Junkyard, and there is the effects from Workshop, so you wanna be getting one of those and they are always going to be taking up both your ring slots. Now, the ones you're going to be getting are the one that activates whenever you hit an enemy from the back, and you also want to be getting the one that gives you a bunch of haste. That one is basically going to be 100 or so haste with a massive uptime, so you can consider that as part of your secondaries pretty much. The one that heals is also very interesting. In a lot of fights or a lot of keys, it's going to do a lot of healing, so either of those works, but I would go for the haste one. That's just going to be better for your entire rotation as a Holy Paladin. There is a new best installed weapon that comes from Workshop, so you can get that with some haste and burst. However, the ideal weapon would come from killing the Nathrus. So if you are able to kill the Nathrus on Mythic, therefore you can get the best weapon there is right now, but that it's probably not going to be the case for a lot of you that are watching this guide, and therefore your best bet is to just get this weapon from Workshop and just upgrade it with Valor. So let's now talk about the trinkets. Here's where the real big difference in Season 4 comes, and that is because we can now get these coins. They're called the dinars. We get them from killing faded bosses. There is going to be 3 quests. The first one requires you to kill 30 faded bosses, the second one's going to be 20, and the last one's going to be only 10 faded bosses. And then you get these 3 coins. There's going to be only 3 coins, and you can turn them into for any item from the raid, from any of the raids you want. You can then upgrade these items to heroic or mythic item level bracket with items that you get from killing heroic or mythic bosses. So you're gonna need these two currencies, and then you're gonna be making whatever item you desire into whatever item level you can afford. So what are you gonna be buying with these coins? The first and the most obvious answer is gonna be to buy Resonant Reservoir, the trinket that we could not get as Holy Paladins in Season 3 because it just did not drop for us. You could get it traded to you if you were you had people that were kind enough to do so, but now we can just straight up buy it from the vendor. 100% guaranteed. You just gotta kill 30 faded bosses and you can buy it for yourself. So this is gonna be the first thing that I'm gonna be personally buying. This trinket is still OP, does a lot of damage. You kind of need it for pushing keys 100%. Now the question is, which one should be the second trinket? So when things really kind of get interesting is when you think about what the second trinket should be. Now Soldias is still in the play, but Changeling is gone because Mists is no longer part of the dungeon rotation, so that's always going to be lower item level, therefore it's not as good. Soldias still really strong, that is a very good second option. There is now also the Cavalist Hymnal from the Castle Nathir raid. It drops from the Nathrus. Really strong trinket, really good offensively, and the more people that have it, the better it's gonna get. And we also have the Plume from Kel'Thas, really safe option, also for Mythic Plus. However, if you choose to actually take the Plume, you have the downside of then having 2 unused trinkets. You would have Resonant Reservoir, that's an unused, and then there's Plume, that's another unused. Double unused means that the other trinket that you haven't used yet will go on a 30-second cooldown after you use the other trinket. So it's gonna make so that Plume is not exactly an on-demand sort of safe button. It's kind of gonna be defying the point of picking Plume because you're gonna be using Resonant Reservoir and then incurring on a cooldown on Plume very often, meaning that you might actually not be able to use it when you want it, kind of taking away a lot of the value from it. So this is kind of something that I'm getting conflicted at because Plume is really supposed to be this panic oh shit button. Could also be thought about as another defensive or healing defensive or even a tank defensive. So there's that versatility with it. It's a really strong trinket, but I'm still not too sold on the idea of running both Resonant Reservoir and Plume. I already have Plume, so I'll be buying Resonant Reservoir and playing with them, see how bad it feels. Otherwise, you could go ahead and buy these other trinkets. You could buy the Hymnal, you could get Soldias released to get from Gambit, you can already get that, and those would be very strong options. There is also the option of running a double offensive trinket, that being Resonant Reservoir and Dreadfire Vessel. Dreadfire Vessel is an unused trinket that comes from the Nathrus, and that means that you would have a double offensive trinket doing a lot of damage. Now, I don't really recommend this, probably it's not going to be the pick. You'd rather have something a little bit more defensive. Actually, picking Hymnal is probably going to be more offensive because you get the crit, and the crit value from Hymnal is huge, but you could have that option to have a double on use. Probably pretty fun to use, however, you always have this 30-second cooldown, which makes things a little bit clunky. Other options for more healing and offensive trinkets, but just simply stat sticks, would be the Gland from the Eye of a Jailer and also the Elegy, also from Sepulchre. We already know this. So these all trinkets, you can compare them for you and your character personally. Go to questionablyepic.com. There is a section for trinket comparison. You can go ahead and check what trinkets are good for raiding and for Mythic Plus. You should definitely go ahead and compare them there. You can import your simcraft for your character and it tells you what's the best items you should be getting, or even compare the gear that you have right now, so it tells you what to be equipping. Really interesting option if you have any idea, or rather any questions about what gear to equip. Now, when we talk about much more general gear and not trinkets or rings specifically, you should be aiming for the highest item level you can get first, get the foresight going, and then you can choose for whatever the best stats you can afford are. So always aim to get haste and burst. Critical strike will always be nice as well for DPS, but haste and burst will be the focus for Mythic Plus. You should get the foresight as soon as possible, and for the rest of the items, it's just gonna be a matter of getting a lot of haste burst wherever you can afford it. Check out the loot tables for wherever you can get the gear and see where those items are dropping from. You can go ahead and make yourself up a list. It's not that hard. There's a lot of very good haste burst items spread around the different dungeons and the different raids. So whichever the favorite raid is active, then you can go ahead and make your bucket list of things you want to be getting. But the most important things are being covered here. Now, one of the things that I would suggest doing is free up the hands so you can then get the Rygalon hands, are really good stats on those hands. So you could get the foresight onto your helmet, your shoulders, your pants, and then your chest. Now, there might be pants that have really good stats. The tier set for the pants, it's not the best item gear or stats rather for Mythic Plus, so that could also be an option to then use the hands as tier slot and then free up the pants for something else. However, the item slot, the tier slot for the hands, actually it's not that great either, so you can kind of play around with those two item slots, which one you want to be tier and which one you don't. I think the rest, the chest, the shoulders, and the helmet are staple tier slots, so the changing around stuff should be done with the hands and the chest. So let's start the gameplay section talking a little bit about the Season 4 affix and what it has in store for us Holy Paladins. So we can pick 1 out of 4 secondary stats, and we as Holy Paladins would think that we'd rather pick burst over anything else. However, you only get 1% versatility per stack, and you can instead get 2% either haste or critical strike. So what we're going to be doing is always picking either those two, haste or crit. Crit is the more offensive option for pure damage, whereas haste is the much more well-rounded, more healing and damage option. So haste is going to be the pick for most of the dungeons, unless you're really going to go ham on the damage. Now, you gain stacks by killing these dreadlords that are scattered throughout the dungeon. Some of the trash monsters will then turn into a dreadlord. They have a little buff, you can see which those monsters are. They still do give count, but they have their own set of abilities, and you just gotta kill them, and then you get 1% of this stat. Okay, so how do you play Holy Paladin in Mythic Plus? Well, that's a really complex question, and it's not something we really have the time to deep dive into for this video. However, I really encourage you to check out the gameplay videos that I have on this YouTube channel. I have some keys over there, you can see what I'm doing and try and learn from that. Now, a really basic rundown of what you have to do as a Holy Paladin in Mythic Plus is be on melee, generate Holy Power by keeping Holy Shock on cooldown for both healing and DPSing, and using your Crusader Strikes for maximum Holy Power generation. Now, your Vanquisher's Hammer, if you're playing Necrolord, is gonna be your big damage button as well as your big catch up with healing button. You're gonna have to rely on people being on melee, and if they are not, those that are not on melee, so you have any range in your group, those are usually going to be your second beacon targets. That way you are able to heal them without really having too many issues with them not being in melee and therefore not hitting them with Ladodon. But your Vanquisher's Hammer and consuming the charges of Vanquisher's Hammer is really the way you do the big healing. So really important to have a lot of melee in your group. The less melee there is, the less good a Necrolord Holy Paladin is going to be. So at least you would like to have 4 melee. Now, this might not be the case with the meta that's shifting now. Could be 2 range sort of meta. In that case, Holy Paladins wouldn't be doing that great, and we would fall even lower than other already Holy Priests and Resto Shamans. But you can still try and do your best by just trying to play to the best of your abilities and try and really bank on that Vanquisher's Hammer to do big healing. It's really the only thing we have to try and actually pump some numbers. Whenever people are taking big damage, you want to have stuff ready, you want to throw it, you want to have the charges up and running and consuming them with some Word of Glory and just trying to hit as many people with Ladodon. It's that simple, a little bit of an RNG fiesta, not exactly RNG, but you know, people sometimes might be there. You don't really have the time in the middle of the action to really see where everybody is. Sometimes you could do something like that, sometimes it's really not feasible, so you're just gonna try and see and pray rather that somebody is in melee and you can hit them. So it is kind of not exactly ideal right now, especially if you have 2 range in your group to be playing Necrolord, and that's why Kyrian is so good and it's still such a good option. The more range you have, the better the Kyrian is going to be, because then you will guarantee that your Divine Tools are actually doing the healing you expect them to do, whereas Necrolord sometimes can let you down if your positioning is not proper or if people are just not where you think they are. Now, in terms of damage, it's all about keeping Consecration down all the time, 100% as much as you can. Whenever you are getting into a pack, the first thing you gotta do is put Consecration consecration down. So the more consecration you have, the more damage you have. And a lot of people are not actually keeping track of their consecration. I really encourage you to take or get some sort of weak order that tells you when consecration is not down, because the cooldown of consecration is shorter than the duration of the consecration. You can keep on moving it back to where the mobs are. So if you're kiting, you can replace or relocate your consecration, making sure it's always up and running under the mobs. It really is the main source of your damage. Then it's just gonna be a matter of trying to make use of the Forset, using as many Latsadon as you can for pure sake of proccing Awakening and Divine Purpose, so you can keep on getting more and more procs of wings and reducing the cooldown of wings more and more with the Forset. If you go into a very big pack, a very big pool, and you have wings, or you have wings ready even and you already have them running, you can then go ahead and use Shield of the Righteous for damage, but I really wouldn't encourage to do that in the average pack. If it's a massive pack, then go ahead for it, but if you do not have wings active and it's not a big pack, then I would always recommend to go for some Latsadon. I know it's boring, I know it doesn't really feel the greatest when everybody's over the top, but it's the way we have to play now, because the wings uptime is really where the big damage is coming from, and yeah, Vanguard's momentum, Vanguard's momentum is really praying in being able to use those Hammers of Wrath, and therefore we need the wings. The more wings uptime, the more damage we get from our legendary, the more damage we do overall. So that's really the big, or rather the most basic rundown I could give you for Holy Paladin. Any questions or anything else that you might like to want to know or ask, please drop them in the comments. I'll definitely be ready to answer them. I'll be happy to do so. Also, you can drop by my streams. I stream also on YouTube and on Twitch, on twitch.tv/midwayeu, so you can go there and watch me play some keys or some raids live. Drop any questions, or yeah, you can do that there, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. But anyways, this is gonna be the end of the section. So that is pretty much all I have for you, everybody. Please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that immensely. Also, check out the gameplay guide if you haven't done so yet and you're interested in that kind of stuff, as we mentioned before. And that's gonna be it for me. I hope you see you in the next video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please click the bell for notifications once again if you want to see all my other videos whenever they come live. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye!